Thank you very much. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Employment Committee of Parliament Council. Very important day. We're going to hear from the agenda. Those of you online, you're most welcome to join us. I'm sorry that we probably appear like tiny little dots at the end of the Putinist table, but that's our particular arrangements in this room. Can I ask colleagues to note, first of all, let's note that Eric Buckmaster is substituting for Fiona Thompson for this meeting only. Eric, thank you very much for being with us. Apologies, there are, I suggest there would be at least one, that would be Fiona Thompson. And welcome to Nigel Bell and Steve Jarvis, leaders of the opposition groups. Thank you for being with us today. And thank you for Oxford as well for supporting us through today's programme. Minutes of the meeting of 9th of February have been circulated as brief, accurate. Thank you very much. And that brings us to item 2, which is succession planning. And Sally, Director of HR, to lead on this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to open up this and give you assurance that we've done some work on succession planning. And in the spirit of that, I'm really pleased to say that I've got my colleague Jenny Dalton, who will present the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Hello, everyone. So as Sally said, I'm here to talk to you today about what we've done at HTC around succession planning. There'll be 3 main parts to the update is around, why are we doing it? And what method did we use to do it here at HTC and what the next steps are. Now you'll notice in the paper, at the moment, we have increased competition and an ageing workforce in the labour market at the moment. In terms of how HTC compares, we've got 16.1% of our workforce who are over 60 years old. When we compare that nationally, the figure is 11%. So you can see we are slightly over the national average for the percentage of employees who are over 60. So the purpose of today is, in that context, is to provide assurance to you, the Employment Committee, that a succession plan is in place in respect of the organisational leadership team. Now, to remind you, those are people in posts in job family levels 17 to 20. A bit about why succession planning is important. It's really key to our high performance workplace. It helps foster a learning climate. It helps us be seen as an employer of choice, and it also supports heavily with our diversity and inclusion agenda. So moving on to how we did it. The 9-box grid is a method used traditionally. We decided not to do that this time. We're taking a more modern approach, and I'll outline to you how we did that. When meeting each of the chief officers, we put our direct reports, or the chief executive and his leaders, their reports into one of 3 categories. So a kind of red, amber, green approach, if you like. So the green was a ready successor. So they had someone beneath them who had demonstrable experience of covering the role, or had the ability to undertake the role and operate at the required job level pretty much straight away. We then had a kind of amber category, which was someone who could be identified as a potential successor. So that was someone who had strong potential with some development and a potential strong contender for promotion into the job family. And then we put people into the red category. So that was where there were no known successors, so that, no obvious successor for the role or technical ability to fill the role. So we took a robust approach to categorising staff, and those that were put into the ready or potential successor category needed to have demonstrated through past and present evidence of required job family competencies, strategic thinking, leadership qualities, demonstrating, obviously very importantly, our RISE values, strong resilience, and also strong performance and development ratings. Really key point there to end on that one. Okay, so in terms of the overview, we can provide good assurance for both chief officer posts and director posts that have ready or potential successors in most cases. Moving on to next steps. There were 36 people identified within the pool of this exercise. I have asked all of those meetings to take place before the end of March 2024. About 20% of those meetings have taken place to date. And we developed a kind of pro forma and some advice and guidance for managers when undertaking those. And we asked some really key questions, really, because although those people may have been identified as being a ready or potential successor, we needed to turn the tables a bit and find out, you know, do you actually want to, do you want to stay here? Are you looking for other roles? Are you happy? Is there anything we can do to help you in your development? So we felt it was really important to have that two-way conversation. We also, within that manager guide, developed a development action plan template. So we identified 7 key criteria that would be required to undertake an executive director or director role. And you were pleased to know that at the top of that list of key competencies was to have a sophisticated counsellor interface. So those tables are being filled out as we speak, and we hope to have an updated picture across the piece by the end of March this year. That's it from me.
So thank you, Jenny, for that overview of succession planning, and it's really good. It gives that assurance. And if members have any questions or clarifications on that paper, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, this is really important for Steve Jarvis.
Yes, it's clearly very important. I mean, I think we would acknowledge that in many cases in these positions at this sort of level, we wouldn't just make an internal appointment. We would be looking to see whether or not there was an external appointee. So I assume that that's kind of part of the message that takes place in these discussions about succession planning. The other thing that occurs to me is it talks about a ready successor. There may be some positions where there is more than one ready successor, and has the possibility been considered that the successors might not necessarily all work for the person who we're looking for the successor for? There are clearly some parts of the council where you need very specialised skills, but there are others where at the director level, what you're looking for is people with more generalised leadership skills, and the fact they work in one part of the organisation wouldn't necessarily preclude them from taking a step up in another part of the organisation. So has that been built into the process?
Thank you, Steve. Yes, it absolutely has. It was discussed at SMB and the results were shared with all of SMB. And that particular discussion did take place last autumn, which is around where we could kind of cross-pollinate our skills, in that just because you work in a particular directorate doesn't mean that that's your sole set career path. So actually the results were shared with all of our chief officers. So they are all each aware of where the kind of ready and potential successors are within each of their directorates. So we hope to encourage that cross-pollination of skills. Thank you.
And then if I may just pick up on the point about the external campaigns, it absolutely is part of our overall resilience planning, but it wouldn't preclude us, once a vacancy becomes available in this space, i.e. director or executive director, going out for an external campaign.
Nigel Bell.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned, sorry, through you, Chair, I think 36 officers, and that you had 20% so far of the interviews. So you're confident that all those 36 should have been interviewed. That's been done by the end of March.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you.
Eric Roster.
Thanks, Chairman. The other thing you sort of hinted at was around retention. So I guess people may feel that they're ready to go on. They may or may not be, but if they're not successful on this occasion, how do we manage that? What's the approach to ensuring that people stay on board?
Thank you, Eric. We have considered that heavily, especially in the light of the financial climate we're in at the moment. So, for example, if people aren't quite ready, we found it very important to focus on what is essentially the psychological contract with each of our employees. Even just sitting down, having a conversation, going through these development plans shows that actually we do see them. We want to help them map out a career path, and also that there are other ways that we can reward people, such as job rotation, helping them obtain a qualification. Can people go into comments or work on special projects? So we're very much clear that we are projecting to our employees those that are great and we want to keep, that even if we can't promote them immediately or there isn't a position available, we very much value their input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bob Dylan.
Just a really brief comment. I just think this is very sensible, very good piece of work, and I'm thoroughly supportive. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Colleagues, I think we're in agreement that talent planning, a proactive support of those coming through, and suggestive of an organisation that cares for its leadership of the future, I think is vital. Thank you so much, Jenny, for bringing this paper to us. Thank you, Sally, for bringing it to the Employment Committee. I think we give it our full endorsement and wish you well as you continue to go through that work to give confidence to all those coming through that we are the organisation for talent. Thank you. Good. Is that agreed? That's lovely. Thank you. Item 3, we'll go on to Organisational Resourcing Programme update. Sally.
Thank you, Chairman. And if I may invite the Executive Director of Resources, Scott Cruddington, to come in on this item by way of introduction to the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Chair. So just to introduce as an update report in terms of where we are with the Organisational Resourcing Programme, which is a key part of our budget for 2024-25 and beyond in terms of our overall financial sustainability. So financial headwinds within local government continue to be extremely difficult, and that's not unique to us here in Hertfordshire. That's pretty much across the sector and beyond. So much so that we've got savings in the region of £46 million needing to be delivered during the forthcoming financial year. And even after achieving that, we would then still have a gap of around £12 million. That's after further government funding that was injected near the end of the finance settlement period for 25-26. So that size of savings package is one of the largest that we've made well in over a decade or longer. We've got a number of transformation programmes already active within the council in the areas of adults, children's services, our workplaces, which is around our whole office estate across the county, vacancy freeze that we've also implemented during the summer of last year. But even after all of those transformation programmes, we would still need to find in the region of about £16 million worth of ongoing savings to be able to achieve that sustainable budget. So having seen that coming before us, that last summer and into the autumn, the Strategic Management Board commissioned PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, to help us review and provide a sort of challenge to the way that the organisation is currently now shaped as an organisation, the roles, the spans of control, the different ways that we're organised as a council more widely. And it's a fact that our organisation has grown in recent years to the tune of over 800 extra headcount than we had pre the pandemic. Half of that can be explained from insourcing that we've undertaken in recent years, but still there is a net growth that has come about through posts that we've needed to absolutely put in place to deal with the increased levels of demand that have come about either during the pandemic or after it. However, that is simply unaffordable over the medium to long term. So we must now rebalance the organisation to a headcount that we can afford over that period. That's also made more problematic with the fact that we're having to use significant reserves, with £11 million worth of reserves looking to be needed during 24-25. And I know it's teaching everyone to suck eggs, but nonetheless, those reserves can only be spent once, and we need to make sure that we hold a prudent level of reserves for other rainy days that we may face. So to deliver the £8 million worth of savings during 24-25, rising to £16 million the year after and ongoing, we would need to reduce the headcount by approximately 400 FTE. But we shouldn't interpret that headcount reduction as simply 400 redundancies. If anything, one of the things that we need to do as an organisation is to avoid compulsory redundancies wherever possible. We need to use the opportunities the vacancy freeze has brought about. That gives us some flexibility. There will be turnover within where people leave us with the succession planning work that is clearly ongoing. That off the back of that, that will give us the sort of flexibility to try to minimise the level of compulsory redundancies that would be needed to deliver that reduction in headcount. We've engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers for this next phase of the programme as well, but to be clear, they're there in a supporting role, not to lead this change. This change is being led by us as officers, as we are accountable to you and members more widely in making sure that we can deliver the savings necessary and balance that budget. There's 3 key work streams that are contained within the programme and included within the paper. Looking at areas of customer and business support, corporate and strategic services, and also organisational design. Now, those people in HR will know what organisational design principles are, but in essence, what it is starting to look at the shape of your organisation, the spans of control, how many people, on average, people have reporting to each manager, the number of layers between Owen and frontline service delivery. That there's a lot of studies and research that's been undertaken on organisations like us into doing what the optimum levels are. But I think over recent years, obviously we've needed to employ new staff, and sometimes the shape of that organisation has become a bit out of kilter. We've made an IP bid that was successfully approved as part of the budget set in a few weeks ago of £16 million to effect and support that change. But just to make clear in terms of the business case for that, that over the next 4 years, we would obviously utilise and spend as much as we need to of that £16 million, but that provides headroom for redundancies. It provides headroom for costs relating to engagement with the PwC, but also technology implementation and other costs associated with running the programme. But the net savings over that period up to 2028 would be a net saving of £56 million during that period. More than happy to take any questions, Chair. There are a range of benefits that I could outline if members wanted to in relation to the benefits that I hope to see from this programme to both residents and the workforce more generally, but I can take those in questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Scott. That's really helpful to set out the case for why we need to do this work. Colleagues, any questions to or comments to Scott? Nigel Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and I know obviously what Scott says about obviously the 400 actual jobs that you want to do jobs. He's trying to avoid as much as you can compulsory redundancies. But clearly, we also mentioned that it doesn't know all about customer support. I just wondered how much of this, obviously we as members obviously representing our residents, customers, how much was going to maybe going to affect the front line, if you like, frontline services.
That's a key question, isn't it? Yeah.
So the intention of the programme is not to affect frontline service delivery that residents experience day in, day out. We may look to streamline some of those processes. For instance, that at the moment we have a number of ways of accessing services here at the County Council. I think that part of this will be looking to unify our front door effectively to the organisation to make it easier for people to come to one or only a few places to have to access services rather than the multitude of ways of accessing services now. But yes, the intention is not about taking staff and capacity away from frontline service delivery. This is more widely about how we run the organisation.
Absolutely, thank you. I think that's the key question to ask. What's the motivation behind this? What's the impact on the organisation? Steve Jarvis.
Thank you. Just a question to make sure I've understood correctly. The report talks about a saving of 24 million over 3 years. I assume that the 56 million is over 5 years, and that's another 2 years and 16 million a year, if I've done the sums right. Have I understood that correctly?
So yeah, I've looked at it from, sorry, okay, I should have kept in sync with the actual report itself, but I'm showing that we would end up in 24, 25 with, over the 4 years. Let me just double check my figures. No, sorry, you're quite right. Over the
That's
5
fine.
years, we would have the 56 million.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, right, I thought that was what that must be.
Yeah.
So I guess my two substantial questions are, why is 16 million the right number? Why isn't it 14 or 18 or 20? Why is that the number that we think is right? And the second is, what's going to be the process of monitoring progress towards this? Both from a point of view that if the expected savings are not achieved, then that clearly has an implication elsewhere in council in terms of how we're going to balance the budget. And there also needs to be a process that ensures that the aim to ensure that it doesn't affect service delivery is being achieved. So there's kind of perils on both sides, that we achieve the numbers, but we have an effect we didn't expect, or we don't achieve the numbers. So what's the process going to be used to make sure that we don't fall off on either of those sides?
So if I start with the IP bid of 16 billion and how we've calculated that, that is very much a forecast that we've placed on areas such as the cost of the HCC delivery team, where we need to backfill some posts, where we're taking quite a large amount of resource out of the organisation to help deliver
I
this
said
change.
16 million, I meant savings, not the.
Oh, on the savings, sorry, apologies, okay. So effectively that saving total has come about from the need of the IP. So the IP has driven a number, but from our point of view, that as the work now progresses, we may well find that number is larger or smaller than the 16 million that we need, and we would need to adjust plans accordingly. But yeah, the 16 million has been derived from effectively a figure we needed to help balance the budget. So that then led to an average. So all you can look at it from point of view is just from an average headcount reduction would give you 400 time and average salary within the organisation gives you the sort of saving that we need. So it's no more sort of complicated than that at this point. But what we will now do is, as we now undertake the work, we will then start to understand that, particularly if there was, I don't know, on average, it was higher paid officer posts that were being consolidated or reduced, then the actual headcount number would be lower in that case. So it's very much a forecast calculation at the moment. As far as how we're going to give confidence around delivery, that we have a very strong governance structure in place. I'm acting as the sponsor of the programme, where I'm reported to weekly on progress against the targets. That very much that we've got almost the equivalent of the church roof repair barometer coming about now from our monitoring of how we're progressing against the 8 million, 16 million, but also understanding the impacts and effects of the changes that we're having. So we're getting the qualitative feedback from each of the work stream leads as well. So we've undertaken some sort of what I describe as sort of like first phase changes that were happening during the back end of last year, where we needed to try methodology. And pleased to say that we're a good 1.5 million into that savings total already from some changes that we've made in the areas of particularly programme and project management. So yes, we're reviewing that each week, and there's a structure to be able to report into the Strategic Management Board once a month, or as the need requires if there are escalated issues that we need to deal with. To be clear, that in many ways that half the saving is going to be coming through the organisational design work programme, and that will rely on all our managers and leaders within the organisation to deliver those changes within those areas. So we see this very much as a combined effort. This isn't like a project team coming into different teams and effectively implementing the changes. It's going to be, we will be giving managers and leaders the toolkits to be able to challenge the way that they're designed and structured. They have the support to work alongside them. And at that point, they will then be looking to implement those changes alongside. But yeah, the simple fact is, if we don't succeed, that money's coming out of the budget one way or another, because that's what we need in order to set a balanced budget. So there's a lot of incentive on all our behalves to deliver this programme. Otherwise, the the decisions become more blunt in terms of what would be necessary in order to make the savings balance the budget within the 24-25.
And are there going to be periodic reports back to this committee about how this is progressing?
Yes, there should be.
Yeah.
Yep. That would be good. Further comment on that from me in a moment. Eric Buckmaster.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, so I'm assuming as we go through the process with the help of the consultants, the aim is always to be the most effective and most productive organisation and efficient as we can be. So if there are even more savings, then of course we'll be looking for those. It's not just meeting the budget, but it's becoming as effective as we can be. Thank you, Chairman.
Just a quick point to add. Absolutely, completely agree with Councillor Buckmaster's point there. As the other thing to mention here is that the PwC in this area have worked with a number of county councils that have done this in previous years, and we are very much now in touch. And Owen's been able to give us some key contacts with people that he's aware of in some of those county councils to help support some of the things to look out for, some of the lessons learned, so we don't fall into the same sort of traps maybe that they may have, some of the opportunities actually to take earlier from the learning as well. So yeah, we're very much looking to take those opportunities as soon as possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Bob Deering.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thank you, Scott. Just from me, some overview comments really. As everyone in this room knows, just the other day I presented our budget. We were really pleased to find an extra £98 million to spend on our residents in the forthcoming financial year. That will maintain frontline services, which was a key objective of ours. I'm extremely proud of that, but we do need to balance our books. This council has got a fantastic record of transformation over many years. We've taken an awful lot of expense out of the council's operation over many, many years. I am completely confident that the organisational review will be a success and will continue to mean that we will operate in an increasingly efficient manner, appropriate to the modern world in which we live. And if I could just make two further comments. The first is that I think the key word here is organisational. This is not simply a programme to remove posts. It's a review of the way the organisation operates. And exactly as Scott has said, it is intended to maintain frontline services, but to do that in a way which is more efficient in keeping with the modern world. And then the final thing, if I may say, Chairman, is that part of the budget I presented just the other day is that our total revenue spend for the forthcoming year will be about £1.1 billion. So we can put the financial objectives of the organisational review into that context. They are important. This review will save us, we predict, £16 million a year, every year. These will be permanent savings. But it is in a context of a very, very big revenue line of 1.1 billion. So that is another reason why I think we can afford residents complete confidence that this will not affect their frontline services. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues and officers, I am minded that this is a really important meeting because in a sense it fires the gun about creating the certainty that we need in approximately 6 months' time about reviewing the organisational strength and progress towards that, making that big saving. The first thing I would like to say actually on that is a big, massive thank you to our staff who are operating over 500 services, and a lot of those services, demand-led, are running quite hot. In other words, demand is high, and in some areas, whilst today we are talking about reducing the number of staff, in other areas we have recruitment deficits, we have vacancies of some 800. And I think part of this reorganisation will be balancing that recruitment need, that scarcity, alongside making sure that our organisation is entirely fit for purpose. I really like the fact that we've got a short time scale to do this in, because I think that gives our residents confidence that we're going to get on with it. And I think it gives our staff confidence that we're going to get on with it. And once we know what the structure looks like and everybody knows what whether they are staying or going, I think we can move on with the programme of work, which Bob outlined is so important for our residents at just over £1 billion. I think that's the fundamental of it. We will be at the end of, just coming back to those savings, £46 million of savings for this organisation is as big an ask as it's ever had. It is huge as an ask of our organisation, and I think that's why it's really important that PwC, who've worked with us so closely on the planning for this, will be here with us for the delivery of it as well. Yes, officer and member led. Yes, officer and member scrutinised, but we need some support to make this happen and at speed. And so I'm really pleased that this programme is being set up to operate in the way that it has, because we can't, I put it in this way, we really have got to get on with this. This is an integral part of our delivery programme this year, and for the sake of both those that receive our services and those that help deliver them, the clarity that we can bring today is so important. So the recommendation is set out under 1 and 2. I'm not going to. And 3, I'm not going to read that out. We've covered those key points. Colleagues, is that agreed? And I would just say that we will have updates, to your point, Steve, we will have updates during the year as to how things are progressing. And just that, and that helpful rider, actually, that we're in touch with other organisations that have been through similar work, and we can understand, therefore, some of the pitfalls and elephant traps that do arise as a result of this. Scott Crutchington.
Just one other final point I think is very important to make is that through Sally, we've also got active engagement with the trade unions on this level of change. And obviously that they understand the sort of the objectives. They will absolutely play their part in making sure they challenge us on the decisions that are being made, but equally they understand the economics of the situation as well. So obviously that there may well be times that they wish to make representations either through to this committee or other mechanisms through to the chief exec. But as it stands at the moment, we've discussed all of the approach to the programme and making sure that there continues to be an open dialogue with them over the coming months.
Thank you, and I would echo that. And I know there's more than one union here, but the unions have worked well with us in the past. These are most challenging times, and it's absolutely right that we get support and challenge, but really helpful that we take our unions with us, who are there to support employee colleagues. Thank you. Sally, did you want anything else from
Exactly the point that's just been made was the one I was going to make. So no further comments from me. Thank you.
There we are. That's great. Thank you very much. Good. Well, we'll now move on to. Let me just say for one more time. Is that agreed? Yeah, we had a few more comments. Thank you very much. That's helpful. Right. Now we come to item 4, which is the recruitment of the chief executive. Head of paid service.
Thank you, Chairman. And I've just got a couple of colleagues whose declarations of interest are going to leave. We're still in part 1, but we'll just allow those colleagues to go who have those declarations. So as they leave, if I may then just thank you, Chairman, bring this item to you today, which it falls to me as the Director of HR under the Constitution to bring the matter of the fact that our current Chief Executive, Owen Mapley, has resigned following his successful appointment as Chief Executive of the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIPFA, and he'll be leaving later this year. And in line with the Constitution, it is something that I don't have delegated authority to go out to a recruitment campaign. So it's absolutely right and proper that I come here today to ask Employment Committee for your permission and endorsement of the recommendations set out in the report. So if I can take everyone's attention to part 1 and 3 of the paper, you'll see that there's a whole suite of recommendations. So it's to note that Owen resigns. It's to delegate authority to myself and the leader to agree the actual last working day, to also agree that we go out to the market for the chief executive, but also to delegate in 3D that I'm delegated the authority in the consultation with the leader and your good selves as well to commence that recruitment campaign for our next head of paid service. To also agree that the post of Chief Executive will be advertised and appointed at a salary range within our level 21 of our job evaluation scheme. And members will note in 3E that starts at 187,623 and ends at 207,751. And then in the next part of this, which is the part 2 of today's proceedings, we have the draft job pack and the job description, which is embargoed because I can't release that information until it goes out to a live campaign, because we wouldn't want to be accused of giving any internal candidate a higher time to look at that. So that's why it earns its place as a part 2 paper, and for no other reason other than that. And then finally, the most pressing matter this afternoon on top of the recruitment campaign is to put, of course, interim arrangements in place. So in 3G, you'll see that the proposal is for Employment Committee, subject to full council, to appoint Scott Crudgington, who is currently the Deputy Chief Executive and Executive Director of Resources, to interim Chief Executive from the 1st of April 24 to provide business continuity. And to note that this will include a review of delegations and responsibilities and any other interim impact that arises from that. That decision has to pass through Employment Committee today, and then it's important to make it known to members that it will need to go to full council. And I'm pleased to say that a meeting has been set up on the 19th of March for the purposes of that. So that deals with the here and now, those recommendations. The paper also goes from 6 onwards in terms of how one might go about the appointment of our chief executive. And it does talk about how we will be following an advertisement, an external advertisement, and the Employment Committee will be kept up to date throughout that process. So right through to when we get to a shortlist stage, right through to when we go to appointment. So it's just to give you that assurance. Our ideal position would be to have the interview process in time to go to full council to get a further endorsement of our substantive chief executive on the 21st of May 24. So that's our ideal position. If that varies, I would let Employment Committee know via the leader as well. And then I think finally, in terms of the legalities of all of this, I give you the assurance that this has been via Quintin Baker as our Director of Governance and Law. And then also, when it comes to the financial implications in point 8 of the paper, the cost of any interim arrangements can be met within our resources that we have. And we will, of course, have a salary saving with the intervening period where our substantive Owen Mapley leaves and our new substantive chief executive is found. In terms of the equalities implications, any campaign that we run, whether that be, any internal campaigns as a result of interim backfill and externally, will have equalities at the heart of the campaign. And what I can reveal in the job pack is we've paid great attention to making sure that anybody that gets this privileged role of chief executive in Hertfordshire County Council will have to have a zero tolerance to diversity and inclusion, any breaches of that, because we take that so seriously. So just to give members in part 1 of the proceedings that assurance that the equalities and making sure we run a fair, transparent campaign will be at the heart of our thinking, and also will be one of the priorities for whoever gets that privileged role of our chief executive. So that concludes part 1 of the paper. And if I may hand back to the chairman to go through those recommendations and seek your approval. Thank you. We're going to part, if I may just ask if we can deal with part one and then break and then go to part two with the detail, subject to part two detail. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I'll go through the part two recommendations. There's very little in there that's not in part one. So we can deal with part one. There's some information in there that's pertinent to the employment pack, but the fundamentals are in part one. We can deal with those, and then that doesn't inconvenience those online or press in the room on that. So let's do this. I don't think we need to do them one by one because that would be Steve Jobs. Yeah. So Steve Jobs.
Yeah, just in respect to G, so we have a fixed date for the appointment of an interim, but a variable date for the departure of the current incumbent.
Not that variable, but yes.
But at least in terms of the recommendations we have here, we appear to have the potential. We have
Thank you.
Interim and a substantive.
Thank you. Do you want to put that as a question to Sally? Sally, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, so thank you for that question. So we do feel that this is a key time for the organisations we enter a financial year and all of the priorities that we've got, that we do want to allow for a handover period, but I can assure members that the existing Chief Executive, Owen Mapley, will be going in April, a date to be finalised and agreed with the leader. But just to give you that assurance, and that will include him taking any annual leave that he is due, as would be the case for any post holder.
We were hoping to have half a dozen and to really optimise the opportunity in this difficult financial climate, etc. But actually, we will ultimately settle for one. Thank you, Steve. That's important to clarify that. And as you said, Sally, leaving at some point to be determined in April. Right, let's just go. So any other questions on the recommendations before we go through them?
Chair, sorry, I've got no questions particularly on the process.
Yeah.
I just wanted to agree and emphasise when Director of Human Resources mentioned about obviously equality is very important and diversity. So I just wanted to support the fact that she's emphasised that, and we're emphasising that here about equalities and diversity and inclusion for, to be in the position.
We've made the point. I take that as read.
Yeah.
It should be in the DNA of the organisation. It is in the DNA of the organisation. It would have to be in incoming chief executive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. I will read them out. So next, intention of the existing chief executive Mapley to resign and will leave in April, as we've just understood fully. Delegates authority to the Director of Human Resources, Sally Hopper, in consultation with me to agree the actual last final working date. And I think we say that is in April. Agrees to the recruitment of the post of Chief Executive, Head of Paid Service. And today's meeting crystallises the point at which I, with the Director of HR, look at how we go about making sure that we optimise our opportunity both internally and externally at the employment market. And that's why today's meeting is so important. Delegates authority to the Director of Human Resources in consultation with the Legal Counsel to commence a recruitment. Agrees that the post of Chief Executive will be advertised and appointed at a salary within the pay range. Commences at 187 and ends at 207. Agrees the draft job pack, which is in part 2. Agrees that in the interim period between the existing chief exec leaving and permanent the deputy chief executive and executive director of resources, Scott Crudgington, is appointed as interim chief executive with effect from the 1st of April. So this is not an April Fool's with lots of banana skins for Scott. It just happens to be the first day after Easter. And I think that is a very, very appropriate time for him to start, in a sense, in that run-up, not only in the recruitment campaign, but actually as part of leading on the delivery of the organisational resourcing that we talked about earlier. And those are the key recommendations. Those are the key recommendations in part 2. So there's nothing else there. I wonder, colleagues, Does anybody have, just before we agree whether that's the way forward on, does anybody have any comments to make or further questions to Sally Hoffer, Director of HR? At this stage? No, that's fine. Can I just take this opportunity to thank Owen Mapley for his service to Hertfordshire County Council, which started with him coming in as Finance Director and then moving up to Chief Executive. He has been an absolute stalwart and helped us through some very difficult times, including COVID, for example. I appreciate there'll be lots of opportunity to say nice things about Owen. I just wanted to put that on record at this juncture. I also have absolute confidence in Scott Crudgington to step up from Assistant Chief Executive to Chief Executive. I think he will do a sterling job, and we couldn't have somebody better to step up into that interim role as we look to a new Chief Executive. And so that's all I'm going to say, other than colleagues, are we agreed that this process is one that we'd like to take forward? Thank you very much. Now, going to move into part two. There's a load of blah, but in reality, what we're going to do is turn the telly off and ask the press to leave. And then we'll just look at some of the detail of the recruitment pack, which probably won't take long. Colleagues of the Employment Committee today and those online, we have just been in part two to discuss formally the process of the employment pack, and there are no further, nothing further has come from that. There are no changes to the recommendations. So I'm just going to ask one more time, colleagues, if we agree the recommendations, which are 4.1 A to G, as I read out earlier. Are those still agreed? Thank you very much. And with that, I close this meeting. Thank you.